Thank you so much. Thank you, Leslie. I am overwhelmed by this honor and delighted to be included among this class of inductees. It's very special. I suspect that I'm receiving this honor not so much for my distinguished broadcasting career, although my weekly radio show, the NHL Hour, was quite a hit on Sirius XM back in the day. But rather, and I guess the video indicated it, this is a testament to the progress and innovations our game has made during my 26-year journey with and through the broadcast industry. I suppose it's really about the people I've met along the way. But before I get to those people, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention another sports broadcasting Hall of Famer, David Stern, who was my boss at the NBA and taught me how to be a commissioner. But the journey through broadcasting, we begin with Rupert Murdoch, Chase Carey, David Hill, and Ed Gorin at Fox. Back in the 90s, they put us back on network television on a regular basis for the first time in decades, and Game 1 of the 1995 Stanley Cup Final was the first Stanley Cup Final game of any sort, any game on national television in the United States since 1980. And while the famous glowing puck might not have been universally appreciated at the time of its debut at the 1996 All-Star Game, particularly by old-time hockey fans, maybe that's where the booing started, it truly was ahead of its time, and it was actually the forerunner of other technical innovations that are standard today, such as the virtual first down line that you see on virtually all football telecasts. And by the way, you know the old saying about the main problem with hockey on television was that you couldn't see the puck. When I took over as commissioner, that wasn't an issue in 1993, because back then you couldn't even see the players because we weren't on national broadcast television in the United States. The next group of people that I journeyed to visit with, who helped transform the NHL on television, were Michael Eisner, Bob Iger, George Bodenheimer, and Steve Bornstein at ABC, ESPN, Disney. They were terrific partners. Disney even wound up owning an expansion franchise, the Anaheim Ducks, which was then known as the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim. And I would say they felt the same way and say pretty much the same thing, because we were the product when ESPN2 was first launched 25 years ago. And this was a strong relationship until I ran into Mark Shapiro, but that's a story everybody knows. And this is a night of celebration. And Mark and I are still friends. Which then brings me, or brought me, to Brian Roberts, Steve Burke, and Jeff Shell, and our 2005 arrangement, our deal with the Outdoor Life Network, which became Versus. And another example, I'd argue, of our willingness to try things that might be unconventional and drew initial snickers, but ultimately turned out to be good for our game. Of course, it didn't hurt that Comcast wound up purchasing NBC, which brought us into a bigger family of which we remain proud and happy members today. And at NBC, we partnered with the legendary Dick Ebersol, Ken Schanzer, Mark Lazarus, and Sam Flood, and another of tonight's inductees, Bob Costas. And Bob's participation has always raised the profile of our events, not the least of which was the first Winter Classic in the snow in Buffalo in 2008. Together, we have moved our game on television forward immeasurably over the last decade. Again, much like with ESPN2, I'd point out that in the case of the NBC Sports Network, the NHL has single-handedly launched another network. NBC has given us the best treatment we've ever had and promotes our league tremendously, and for that we are grateful, so thank you, NBC. I have to mention Canada, because our story there is far more imposing and required far less trailblazing. Hockey Night in Canada, as I think you all know, is an institution which is probably the equivalent of Monday Night Football, Football Night in America, and all of the Sunday afternoon NFL broadcasts rolled into one. During our 2 months of playoffs, we are the #1 rated show in English in Canada virtually every night. Rogers is and has been a fantastic partner that reveres our game and has made a tremendous commitment to the NHL. Taking a broader view of broadcasting, I believe we have also pioneered in a couple of areas, and you saw it in the video. First, we have opened up our locker rooms and our players' and coaches' homes to all-access cameras and microphones, even during our big events, even during the Stanley Cup Final, in a way that we think remains unprecedented. And for that, I thank Ross Greenberg and Steve Mayer and the talented people at HBO, Epic, Showtime, NHL Original Productions, and the NHL Network for bringing our game to life in a way that nobody else has. And 3 years ago, as you also saw, we took the never-before-tried step of partnering with another league, Major League Baseball, on a landmark media rights deal, and I credit Rob Manfred and Bob Bowman for their vision in making that happen. And now that BAMTech has become Disney streaming services, I credit our old friend Bob Iger and Michael Paul for furthering and improving our joint effort. I became commissioner on February 1, 1993, and it took almost 20 years for me and 81 years of our league's history to get to a place where every single Stanley Cup playoff game was broadcast nationally in the United States. That occurred in 2012 and has been the case ever since on the NBC family of networks. It is remarkable for a 101-year-old sports league with so much history that it took that long, but we're grateful that we're finally there. So thank you again, NBC. And for all that we've accomplished over the air, on the ice, and off the ice over the last 26 years, I owe thanks to my two teams, my NHL team, in particular Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly, and of course the NHL owners, and my family, my wife Shelley of 43 years and my 3 kids. I get to stand up here on nights like this because both teams, everybody on both teams, makes it possible. This has been a thrilling journey, critical to the growth of the NHL and the game of hockey, and it could not have been made without each and every person I mentioned tonight and countless more. Thank you again for this tremendous honor.